We open with Seiryu, who plans to beat Team Shinkalion simply. Wipe them all out with Black Shinkalon. Blitz them. Iza says this is a stupid idea and has no desire to do so, saying humanity has this tendency to weasel their way out of pretty much everything that gets thrown at them, so you're gonna need more than just the technological advantage. Suzaku, being Suzaku, will actually take up Iza's challenge of, okay, if you can tell me what they can do that we can't despite our technological advantage, you can go fight them. Meanwhile, with Team Shinkalion, we get Azusa making them a group chat. Not sure why they didn't do this before, but hey, leave it to the social media star to know how to do that. I'm with Azusa here. These people need an organizer. Akita understands the idea of her being the manager, leading to the funny image of her imagining Team Shinkalion as an idol group. Yet somehow she's still mad because she thinks she'll end up getting left out of the loop. Tsurunuki here has a point. She's not a driver, nor does she have technical knowledge. Hell, Ray frickin' builds these Shinkalions. Anyways, the boys get called off to training and start going there. Meanwhile, Azusa laments that she's not going to make the Shinkalions dance anytime soon. Lady, just go find the O-Rangers. I'm sure they'll be happy to see giant robots dance. I'm sure that they'll give you the video themselves. She'll just need to use the direct approach, which is exactly what Suzaku says. Meanwhile, the Ultra Evolution Institute is studying the black particles and how they cause things to turn into monsters. The first thing they do is try to turn a wrench, and it ends up being a blob monster, even with enough of its own will to attack a scientist behind the glass, before it just simply snaps back to being a wrench. The black particles make things evolve, but do they have their own will, or are they just doing the will of someone else? That's certainly a question. They don't even know these things are technology or living beings, they just call them nanoparticles. To make matters worse, they don't have enough black particles to actually do further studies. Izumi walks away, and then talks to Azusa, who gets offended at being called a manager again. Azusa wants to be a driver, but she has zero intention of actually doing any work. Okay, so she just wants to shoot a documentary about the Shinkalions so that when they actually get declassified, she'll end up having a head start. Izumi has another idea for her, one that makes sense for their immediate goals. Get footage of the Black Shinkansen. Azusa calls this something only rail dorks do, and when she calls Hayato a rail dork indirectly, he gets offended, preferring the term railfan videographer. So Azusa basically motivates the boys to go Shinkansen watching. Right on cue, the Black Shinkansen comes, because Suzaku is literally just on the roof right next to Azusa. Also, the reason why no giant monstrous being actually appears is because the particles made their way to Azusa's phone, which she ends up carrying back to the Institute. And it ends up turning less into a giant monstrous being and just a little monstrous being, and it runs amok. It begins hacking into their system. Gotta say, I enjoy Suzaku the most, mainly because of this cat and mouse dynamic she has with pretty much everyone. So, basically, as a standalone system, the Ultra Evolution Institute can't be hacked from the outside. This is actually pretty true of a lot of real-world systems. In facilities like chemical plants or anything that needs high security, such as, I guess, spy agencies, they tend to have their own internal systems. It's kind of hard to actually, hack them when you can't actually access them. Remember Rogue One and how they actually had to break into a facility and physically grab a hard drive and then transmit the Death Star plans? That's pretty much the same principle. It's easier to hack from miles away than it is to actually go in and steal a specific piece of information that only exists on one computer, and it has to have 5 access codes to even get into. Futaba, being acting director, orders a lockdown of the entire facility. She also orders the Shinkalions to be secure in a capture field because she remembers what happened the last time Shasha got hacked. The boys want to know what the hell is going on here. Shasha, meanwhile, is on the verge of absolutely losing it. Why? Because it turns out he has some rather personal photos, such as him working out despite not having muscle cells, and him sleeping. I always thought that hat was part of him and not actually a hat for some reason. So Hayato simply calls Azusa since she's both not there and the only other person who could reasonably hack the place because, well, she's the only one unaccounted for. But considering this is a phone, they find out pretty quickly who the culprit is. After some size jokes about the giant monstrous being, it's time to actually grab it. Okay, guys, I know your job is to document this stuff, but can you at least use a bag or a box and box this thing and just smash it with a mallet before it actually does anything, before you actually give it names? At least they brought the butterfly nets and the buckets. Saranuki's actually the first one to grab it. Unfortunately, we're only at the 15-minute mark of the episode, so the phone ends up crawling up his sleeves and through them, making him laugh. Akita grabs him, but that goes about as well as you'd expect. That phone is a lot stronger and ends up dragging Saranuki. Shashot ends up getting used as a stepping stone, and Hayato gets a picture taken of him and photoshopped. Hayato is ready to smash that phone with a butterfly net. I like the engineering crew's solution, the American solution. Just shoot it. That doesn't work, and Azusa has been noticeably absent. The boys are reasonably annoyed. However, Izumi says this was all according to Keikaku. Izumi's gambit was to take advantage of Suzaku's duplicity. Suzaku's the type of person to infiltrate and learn about the enemy that way. Izumi was banking on that and used that against her. So basically, Azusa was bait, or rather her phone was bait. Azusa tries to take credit by saying all according to my Keikaku, and Hayato points out that she knew about the plan as much as Jean Valjean knew about Javert. So you may be wondering about the data. Well, it's a trap, so obviously they made a bunch of dummy data. Guys, try not discussing this while the little monstrous being is still running around. So yeah, apparently Izumi didn't think as far as to actually catch the stupid thing, much to everyone's outrage. Hayato has an idea. Call the phone. Give it so many inputs that it slows down to the point that it's easy to capture. Sounds like a very familiar plot involving Digimon. Literally everyone calls the phone so it slows down by that much and gives it this pained headache expression. They win! Which brings us to the big theme of the show, if you haven't figured it out already. Working together allows us to overcome all obstacles. I hate to use this term, it's a bit cliche, but hey, Seiryu seems to be motivated with the idea of cooperation. Then again, if people in the real world could actually cooperate with each other and not be at each other's throats, a lot of our problems would go away. So I guess the message is worth reiterating. And Iza lets him use Dragoon mode of a Black Shinkalion. Unlike the historical Dragoon, which rode horses, this one is a dragon mount. You know, mechs on robots wasn't something I expected from this show, but I am so glad that they did that. With episode 25, we have Hayato visiting Ryuji's mother. It's a nice deed. Oh, and the group chat from the last episode makes an appearance right here. Izumi approves of the trip, which I'm sure nothing will ever go wrong. Yeah, it totally goes wrong, basically the first few minutes of the show. At Nagoya, Hayato notices something. It's a Shinkansen. This is Dr. Yellow. It will be plot relevant. No, it is not a new Shinkalion. Yet. Hayato goes a bit nuts. He realizes that he's nuts. Oh, Hayato, never change. Anyways, everyone gets a kick out of Hayato sounding like a nutcase, except for this little girl right here who probably doesn't see anything too weird about this weirdo going nuts over a train. Then we cut to a karate tournament. This is Ryuji's brother. I get no gear karate tournaments exist. What is a karate tournament called again? This specific part of it, I think it's called kumite. No gear kumite. But I think you at least need to make content. Then again, this is a kid show and there's always artistic license with these things. I'm also not sure how Japan does kumite. In America, we have to do it with gear sparring, at least have the gloves. Okay, so this is Tatsumi, Ryuji's younger brother. You remember Tatsumi, right? He was in a flashback a while ago. Ryuji and his mother are watching this whole tournament unfold on TV. Then Hayato arrives. We get some interesting backstory. It turns out Ryuji's mother knew Hayato Hayasugi more than just, oh, he's that guy who has my son drive a train that turns into a mech and hopes that he doesn't turn into Shinji Ikari. No, it's much deeper than that. Her late husband was part of the Ultra Evolution Institute. That explains a lot about Ryuji. Then Ryuji excuses both him and Hayato. Meanwhile, we see some fine-tuning be made to the 500. During this conversation with Hayato, we do see them bond a bit. Ryuji's a lot less cold than he used to be. Hayato apparently attributes his good luck to the Dr. Yellow he saw at the Nagoya station earlier. This baffles Ryuji, and pretty much everyone watching. Hayato explains that Dr. Yellow is actually a test Shinkansen. It's designed to collect data and find problems within basically all rail systems, whether it's electrical or physical. Then Tatsumi arrives. I love Hayato's introduction to Tatsumi. He sees him throw a flying kick and then immediately falls and stumbles, and then gets up. Like all older siblings, Ryuji knows what his brother wants: food. This kid is a freaking shark and gets his own eating montage. However, he says he does this because he needs to get stronger than his brother. When asked why he doesn't do karate anymore, he just says he doesn't feel like it and leaves. His brother calls him out on that lie, although Ryuji had already left, saying Ryuji had to be the extra parent and thus that's why he stopped. It was Hayato Hayasugi who basically paid for their mother's treatment. Also, Tatsumi knows about the Shinkalions. We see from the flashbacks that Hayato's dad did not ask Ryuji to drive the Shinkalion. It was Ryuji who wanted to know the compatibility rating he had, and he wanted to drive the Shinkalion. And Tatsumi was there. So apparently Tatsumi ate so much that he literally cannot eat his favorite meal. Besides being our moral of the day, I'm sure this will be plot relevant in like 3 seconds. We see further flashbacks trying to see the Ultra Evolution Institute's various attempts at breaking the Ultra Evolution speed. Instead, they just keep breaking engines and motors. We also get to see Mr. Kiyosu. That's all he really is referred to. I don't think they actually ever referred to him by name. Man, with the amount of backstory we're getting for the Shinkalions and Ryuji, you think that the death flags are coming up right now. Yeah, the Black Shinkalion's on the move right now. It's headed for Omiya. It's a pretty direct attack on the Institute. Yeah, when your organization requires trade mechs, it's a bit easy to know where those mechs' rails end up being. So, they end up causing the thing to be captured in one of our capture fields. Seiryu doesn't really care and just waltzes through them. He doesn't consider Akita, Suranuki, or Shinobu to be real threats. And considering how he basically eats them for breakfast, yeah. And good luck trying to actually blindside the guy. He's not taking it today. He just kicks their butts. They barely are able to stand, much less counter anything he does. Ryuji has an idea. Bait Seiryu into the Ultra Evolution Institute. Okay, on the surface, this seems like a bad idea. A stupid idea, even. But it's actually a pretty good idea. Entrap Seiryu and basically defeat him. After all, the N700A is designed for close combat. The Black Shinkalion's current mode is designed for ranged combat. Izumi agrees to the plan, kicking everyone out of the museum because that's where they host the Shinkalions. Yeah, the Institute being under a highly populated area might not have been a good idea. And somehow, once again, the show made for 7-year-olds to sell trade mech toys is better than Man of Steel. I mean this without a hint of irony. So apparently they have a working teleporter and basically get dragged through the subway tunnels. Geez, no wonder their security budget sucks. They spend it all on advanced force field projectors and teleporters. Seiryu is quite pissed, but hey, we have an excuse to blow the budget now. Ryuji arrives. However, Seiryu gets another upgrade, Berserker Mode. If you haven't noticed, it now resembles Ray Shinkalion, the 800 Tsubame. Hokuto points out that Hayato will need to stay put. There is no chance in hell that they'll be able to beat that Shinkalion unless they do the cross combination. Now it's time for episode 26. Basically, Shinobu, Okuta, and Tsurunuki ejected because their Shinkalions are now offline. Tsurunuki thinks what the audience thinks. It transformed again? Ryuji ain't doing so hot. He literally gets his back drilled into by the Black Shinkalion. See, Ryuji's the strongest of the Shinkalion drivers so far, outclassing Hayato, Okuta, Tsurunuki, Shinobu, and basically everyone like Miku and Rei. Seiryu intends to use basically every single one of their abilities to break Ryuji. He already uses Tsurunuki's drill. Shinobu's shuriken is next. Okuta's cannons. Even going all out on advanced mode doesn't work, because Jiro here decided to adopt Midoriya's shoot style and simply kicks Ryuji away. Hayato is pretty much horrified at the damage Ryuji is taking and is itching to jump into battle, but Ryuji simply rebuts him. The most important thing now is to beat the Black Shinkalion. So Ryuji uses Hayato's metaphor of Dr. Yellow. The point of Dr. Yellow, again, is to find flaws, cracks, and defects within a system, so that when the actual passengers arrive, those would have all been patched up because Dr. Yellow had detected them. Ryuji is a tester. Hayato and Hokuto are the main event. Seiryu intends to cut down Ryuji using Tunsel's sword, but Hatsune Miku won't let him. Miku blocks the attack. Meanwhile, Rei also arrives. However, that comes with some issues in and of itself. Last episode, dragging Seiryu through the tunnels ended up damaging the tunnels. Subsequent appearances by Ryuji, Miku, and Rei only screwed things up more. The tunnel collapsed, and the engineers are working as hard as they can, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Not to mention Hokuto is only a certain distance away, so they had to remove dirt, rock, and concrete, and then have to make sure the tracks are functional and Hokuto doesn't simply slide off and smash into the side of the tunnel. Basically, Miku, Rei, and Ryuji are trying to defeat Seiryu and at least stall for time, which it's going well, sorta. No, it really isn't going well. Everyone knows that they're just buying time. Basically, everyone who has a free set of hands, they are told, grab a shovel, grab a pickaxe, get out of your desk, start digging out. This actually works, and the tracks are repaired and inspected in time. Meanwhile, Seiryu is going on a power trip and firing missiles in every single direction, intending to collapse the entire institute and just kill all the heroes. Points for efficiency, at least. Okay, it's not that efficient, he's just going on a power trip. Ryuji's big idea is to use Rei's high-powered pantograph arrow and Miku's absurdly sharp Tunsel sword to hit Seiryu at range. And Seiryu blocks this and takes Miku's sword, and then uses it to break Ryuji. Whoops. By the time Hayato and Hokuto enter the fray, Miku, Ryuji, and Rei are effectively exhausted. Let's see if the E5 Cross 500 can beat it. Time for episode 27. Despite the 500 and E5 merging, the focus is more on Hayato. Hayato apologizes for being late. Ryuji has clearly broken his arm, but he basically says Hayato he trusts to finish the battle along with Hokuto, and the others withdraw. Hayato's compatibility rating actually rises during the battle. Hayato is ready to just end this in one shot using the Super Grand Cross. Obviously, Seiryu counters, but the issue is that the battery is like 3 AAA batteries for the E5 Cross 500. Super Grand Cross is super draining. So Izumi goes, "Safety regulations? What are those? We're dealing with a crazed supervillain in our midst. Charge the E5 Cross 500 and then blast him to high hell." Everyone begins rewiring the entire grid into the test chamber. Hayato and Seiryu continue to clash, and while it's funny to see Seiryu get stalled by a freight train, that's probably smart to not actually pick a fight with the freight train. Giant robot or not, something like that moving that fast has been known to turn chunks of concrete, not even chunks, an entire pillar of concrete, into nice dust. Now it's time for Super Grand Cross plus Ultra. Seiryu is not dead or anything. In fact, the Black Shinkalion is still able to move and get up. Seiryu is ordered to retreat. Hayato asks something that baffles Seiryu. Does Seiryu actually like the Shinkalions? This as I said, shocks Seiryu, and he has no idea how to respond. So everyone celebrates right here and now, including Ryuji, who's probably not going to be showing up anytime soon because of that broken arm. Meanwhile, with the villains, Iza apparently notices that his agents have been changing because of the battle with the Shinkalions. They're going to need to transform by themselves, and by finding help and answers on their own. It's not like you've been of any help, Iza. I do like we get some interactions with the expanded cast, Rei interacting with Shinobu and Miku. Then we get a nice scene of Hayato thinking about Seiryu, and basically anime rival stuff. These episodes are great. As much as I joke about the Ultra Evolution Institute being a bunch of incompetent buffoons who can't afford good security, using Azusa to capture more black particles was a competent idea. To defeat an enemy, you must know them, and Azumi certainly knew how Suzaku operated. I'm happy they even used the dummy data, at least that showed foresight on the Ultra Evolution Institute's part. So apparently Shashot's sleeping photos are not going to be on the agent's hard drives. In terms of episode 25 to 27, yes, Dr. Yellow will be a Shinkalion. No, this is just a metaphor right now. Yes, Tatsumi will be plot relevant. Why would you design a character like him if you're not going to make him plot relevant? And I really enjoy this glutton. He's more classic shonen anime protagonist, but as a supporting character. He'll be a driver, but he won't be the driver of a Dr. Yellow. In terms of plot, I do like that Shinkalion once again does a good job at highlighting how many moving parts need to be running in order for any operation to work, and for any operation to work, you need people to move those parts one way or another, or to sustain those parts. And in some cases, you need to make sacrifices in order to get the plan rolling. Obviously, they weren't going to kill Ryuji. This is a kids' anime that airs right next to Pokemon. No, its sequel aired right next to Pokemon, but still, same demographic. They weren't just simply going to kill off Ryuji. Though I suppose a broken arm taking him out of commission is a death in some way. However, in terms of the final clash, I do just like how it just came down to Hayato and Seiryu. I do think Hokuto needed far more input to this plot than he actually did. Yes, he was at the center of some flashbacks, but ultimately the final battle came down to Hayato and Seiryu. Hokuto really only commented on Ryuji at any given point, which isn't great. I think we could do more with him. Those are just my thoughts on the episodes. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.